Hello, and welcome to Tavern Talk. I'm Timothy Gibbons.
And I'm Trevor Lancaster.
And I'm Kenny Shannon.
Being joined today by Kenny Shannon.
And we will be discussing yesterday's Mead, where we recap our previous campaign sessions. So, Kenny, your first time joining us.
On the show, yes, but I have been a player in multiple campaigns. Recently, we've had a session where it's been very interesting. Almost unorthodox, I would say, backwards for the party, as the fighter's been mistaken for a wizard as he carries a strange hat and a staff and convinces everybody around him that he is indeed a wizard.
Thanks to the actual divination wizard giving him a natural 20 roll on his charisma check to deceive everybody that he is in fact a wizard.
Truth is stranger than fiction.
You guys make it so easy for the DM at the table, I've gotta say.
So yes, just to clear it up, we are talking about the campaign that Trevor is currently running for us, our new year-long campaign. I'm kind of curious, how did you intend for this to start out, and how has this changed?
It actually hasn't changed at all. Funny enough, you guys are actually right on course to where I was thinking you'd end up. I have a few other offshoot areas, but I play pretty sandboxy, so... At the moment, the future drop back has caused a slight correlation change, but everything really tied in together rather smoothly with that.
So I think we need to quick recap so we don't lose everybody. We need to discuss the players and the characters that are in this world.
You know what I really should have done? I really should have grabbed my notes.
You should have. Well, let's see if between the three of us we can figure this out. So, Kenny, your character was the most recent arrival. Give us a quick description on him.
All right, so I know I'm visiting for spring break, so I want to make my character count, and I want to make him memorable and just have an impact. Well, I've been seeing a lot of sci-fi movies and time travel lately, so I just got an idea of what if I get an Aasimar, who was a cowboy from the future, brought back into the past, and he has a mission to vanquish evil, but his memory has been modified so heavily that he can only rely on his talents as a rogue inquisitor to piece things together and slowly take steps forward on how he should go about his future.
Right, and so he's basically back to vanquish evil, not entirely sure what that evil is, just that it exists, he must vanquish it, but he doesn't remember why.
Exactly. It brings like a really cool idea that I've always wanted to try in D&D, and that's the fish out of water mentality. Where everything in D&D seems so foreign and strange, yet somewhat familiar. Looking around, seeing how different everything is from the sort of semi-modern society that he comes from. He's the only one carrying 2 firearms.
Right, which you've already showed to the gnome, who made a ridiculous check, and now we could very well have firearms in this current iteration of the world, thereby changing the future.
Well, I put the firearms really low to actually ascertain how they work. So pretty much any tinkerer, including him, could fabricate or remake a pair. They're really rudimentary.
Yeah, they're just 2 simple 6-shot revolvers.
Right. And then as far as the rest of the cast, so this was Kenny's character was the one that joined us for the last session. We've had a couple of sessions just kind of figure out the characters and go on our first quest, which was clearing out a knoll encampment. Let's see, just a quick rundown on the characters. We had Aaron's character, Morsum, who, which honestly, I love this character. He is an elf, but he is an elf that was raised by dwarves and so thinks he's a dwarf, and was so heartbroken as a child that he didn't have a beard like all the other dwarven children, so his parents give him a belt of dwarven kind so that he can grow a beard like a proper dwarf, and he chooses to become a barbarian battle rager.
Oh, it's truly adorable.
And oh my lord, is he an effective barbarian?
Oh no, he is an excellent barbarian. And the way he was rolling the other night, it was ridiculous.
Those gnolls never stood a chance.
Oh my gosh, they did not. They really did not stand a chance.
And then next up, we have Tristan's character, Cleric. What was his character's name again?
Life Domain, Dragonborn.
Melkar.
Malkar. Life Domain. No, it's not. He's actually not a Dragonborn. He is a human cleric, Life Domain, who was raised by dragons.
Ah.
And then we have Zach's character, High Hill
Ree.
Who's our druid.
Is that Ree with 2 E's or 3 E's?
3 E's.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
3. We had the world is a little bit more advanced. We had to adjust for inflation.
There were too many Rees in the area, so he had to add an extra E on the end. I still haven't made all those other Rees that inhabit the area, but just know when you run into a Ree, they're probably not related.
All right, then we have Matt's fighter character, Hans, which kind of a running joke. The first character Matt ever played when I first started DMing was a wizard. For whatever reason, no matter what character Matt plays, I instantly think he's a wizard.
Harry.
Yes.
Sorry.
So it kind of started as a running joke. I just kept jokingly referring to Matt's character as a wizard. He decides that he's going to make his fighter act like a wizard and try to fool people into thinking that he is a wizard.
So he's really making a proper version of Gandalf.
Right. If you're going off of the whole Gandalf was a fighter with an 18 intelligence.
It only makes sense. What kind of wizard charges down a giant beast, lops off its head with a sword, and continues on into the fray?
Exactly. Well, and then, of course, we had that great encounter where we're taking down the obsidian birds. Everybody else is under the carts while our party is taking them down. And what does Matt's character do? He pulls out his longbow and then loudly proclaims with each attack, "I cast arrow!"
It was amazing from the archaeologist's point of view, but we're getting ahead of ourselves.
I mean, mix that with the sound of my revolvers going off as gunshots in tandem with the arrows, and they're convinced that he's casting a real spell that has true magical powers. There's the shattering of shards of obsidian and crystal falling from the sky.
Right, well, and then also you have my character, the wizard, the actual wizard, who's throwing down second-level shatters at these birds. Which then we get to, let's see, covered everybody? Yes. Then we get to my character, Wendell Bursk, divination wizard. This is actually my first time to play a wizard. And I was playing with him a little bit the first round, thinking maybe, okay, I'm going to go with the inheritor background, a little bit snooty. Got done with the session, I hated him. So I went back, reworked him a little bit, decided, okay, he's not snooty, and I'm going to make him younger. What's his hook? Then I'm thinking, divination. He's got a heroic mindset. He is going to become this universe's friendly neighborhood wizard.
Yes. The fact that he's going to become a masked vigilante is absolutely wonderful, and I'm looking forward to that so much.
So, what I told Trevor was, I want my character, he's had this vision, being a divination wizard, he's had this vision that there's this red star that's falling towards Earth, and he comes from a long and noble family whose crest is that of the Rock, the giant bird, mythical bird. And in the vision, he sees the star falling and rises up on the wings of the Rock to challenge it. To him, he must become this world's greatest hero to battle its greatest evil, and so he has chosen to give himself the name Rockstar. And then I'm going to be dumping a couple of levels into a Forge Domain Cleric so that he can fashion himself a metal suit, aka Steampunk Iron Man.
Yes, I'm also looking forward to that. The material components and collecting of that is going to be great.
That we are going to have so many side quests.
Oh,
so
yes.
many.
And then when your character dropped in from the future with amnesia, his subtle recall of everything that's changed throughout the town and having these slight peppered bits of deja vu has been really interesting to me because that's forced me to think forward on the town and then reverse it.
It does add an interesting story dynamic because from my character's point of view, he's only known a sort of wasteland version of the world he's experiencing.
Yes.
So whenever he's in the wilderness, he still feels okay, like almost natural. But whenever he goes into civilization, seeing that many people alive on a single planet, it amazes him and he's befuddled.
Right. No, that makes for good fun. Is what it does.
It also makes for a good like backdrop and kind of like foreshadowing to the future, and gives the DM food for thought.
And I'm not going to ask because I don't want to spoil the ending. But the minute you allowed his character to drop back in time, and we suddenly have this Asmar from the future, who's been sent back to battle this evil. My character is intrigued by this. Me as the player, I'm like, oh Lord, is the evil he dropped back to vanquish the same evil that I had the precognition dream about?
You don't know.
I don't know. And quite frankly, I don't want to know before it's ready to be known.
It'll probably be a while.
I'm assuming.
Being a protector Aasimar and having gunslinger abilities, what I'm looking forward to is a steampunk anime cowboy shootout between us and this great evil of the future. And I want to see just how epic we can put it on a scale.
Honestly, I'm thinking with all the stuff that we're going to be doing, because number one, okay, so just going back to what we did, now you get to know the characters. Our very first mission, after we get all the characters together, minus Kinney's Asmar, who hadn't shown up yet, we go and we check, of course, the bounty board, which is usually what you do when you want to get the ball rolling and pick up a little bit of coin. And we find 2 missions that intrigued us. One was, this one we were actually given by Zach's character's uncle, that there was a cave that was infested with gnolls that needed to be cleaned out, and that we'd get 100 gold per gnoll head.
Right, yes.
And then there was another one, an expedition to go dig up dragon bones. And we were like, that sounds good. We got about a week before we need to deal with the dragon bones thing. So let's go pick up some coin in the meantime.
Yes, no, well, you guys actually, through looking around for the bounty board, Morsim, the elf dwarf, found himself actually talking with one of his cousins, who...
Morsins, I just gotta say it again, Morsins has got to be one of my favorite barbarian characters we've seen at this table.
Oh, it is absolutely lovely. Absolutely love him.
So those of you that aren't familiar with Sword of the Coast, this is a battle rager elf who's been raised by dwarves and thinks he's a dwarf. And he's an elven axe idiot dwarf.
It's beautiful. It truly is.
It really is. It really is, truly. Anyway.
And one of the other things is we are obviously doing a homebrew game. So there will be some slight tweaks here and there from the DM's perspective that will be allowed throughout the game. Some monsters that'll be slightly altered throughout the telling of this.
Mm-hmm.
But the funny thing was when they met up in a region that was a ways away from the dwarven region that Morsom grew up in. But they ended up working their way back that direction to investigate these gnolls. Upon arriving, he actually runs into one of his cousins down there and finds out about their excavation that they're going on to excavate these dragon remains that were found on a distant island from here. They proceed to make a few high charisma rolls and get in on this excavation journey as a couple of bodyguards, which he is more than happy to share the coin, as it's quite a lot to be on such a cutting edge of an archaeological dig. Then you guys set out knowing that it would be a week or 2 before you guys actually left for port, set out to attack the gnolls.
Now, before you go on, I want to ask, what was the deal with that golden chicken? Was he ever found on the ship?
Oh, the glowing chicken?
Yeah, the glowing chicken.
Well, so what was going to transpire throughout the traveling of the ship was there was a person who was actually transporting a spell of daylight, and the chicken ended up pecking it apart and accidentally casting it on itself.
Beautiful.
So he was radiating this bright light and just glowing, running all over the place until finally the spell wore off.
So that's what happened. Now I know.
So actually, he's just a plain-looking chicken right now.
So then when me and Matt started casting Minor Illusion with an actual glowing chicken,
it blew everybody's minds. The entire ship was in an uproar on being attacked by a chicken god, and currently the chef has completely changed his menu to not have any more poultry on it because he thinks it'd be a disservice to his new god.
So we didn't eat that chicken.
No.
are we going to get back on that ship and the chickens are going to be like the Egyptians treated their cats?
Possibly.
I love Dungeons and Dragons so much. Okay, so we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Jumping back to the Knoll Cave.
Jumping back to the Knoll Cave. You guys had set out on the encounter from the Knoll Cave, and I had already, thrown the entire thing together. And then threw in spackles of mystery in between the two locations that I assume you're going to probably look into later. DMs always assume this. It's seldom ever true.
Well, we were doing our best with our nature checks, but I don't know if our nature checks were high enough.
Well, I mean, you guys were getting large tidbits of things here and there, so... Well, we'll see.
So anyway...
You're going to be trying to set up an encampment there, because that's what you're doing, but... Which is interesting to me, because I was thinking you guys would be in that cave, leave, and then not go back for, like, a couple of months, but all of a sudden you're like, we like it here. Let's buy this place and make it our new home. And it's like, oh, wow, okay.
So basically, we're heading to this cave, and all of a sudden we realize that there is not a living thing in the forest. At all. We keep going. Nature checks. We're like, something here is either scaring away or eating everything. We're not quite sure if it's the gnolls, and if it is the gnolls, then maybe we're dealing with a bigger herd of gnolls than we thought. Or pack of gnolls.
Pack.
Or a dozen. Baker's dozen. Baker gnolls. Horde.
A bakery of gnolls.
I like this, a bakery of gnolls. Crunchy on the
Gnoll
out,
baker.
soft, but jelly on the inside.
Ah, jelly, the pure root of evil. As
Exactly.
all gnolls would. Because they're constantly trying to be filled.
Now, use that visualization of the bakery of gnolls with the jelly on the inside, and imagine that jelly being exposed and the dough being ripped apart by the barbarian.
So yeah, we launch our assault against the Knoll Cave. That actually went pretty good. We came in from two different directions. Managed to get a group of us up on the top, including it was my wizard and our barbarian elf / dwarf. So while the other party's attacking the wall outside the cave entrance and getting the gnolls' attentions, I'd lower the barbarian down into the thick of the fray and then stay up high just firing down magic missile on it as the cleric and the druid in Velociraptor form with the fighter on his back leaps the wall and charges into the fray.
Yes. It was actually quite a good combo on the back of that Velociraptor coming in and using that extra charge and making his attacks. That worked out really well.
The only problem was we forgot to cut the heads off and take them.
I had it was great because one of the group of the party, Highhill, decided that he needed to see what was in the cave, and so he charged into the cave. And then the rest of the group were like, okay, we need to get these guys looted. And while they're in the middle of looting them, he discovers a group of people who've been captured in the back part of the cave. So he shouts out for aid, and the cleric and everybody else rush in to find these two captured and mutilated people. One a female with her arm looks like it had been severed, and the bleeding stopped in order for them to keep bits of her alive longer, while the man had the same treatment but to his left leg. So they instantly were able to get them out of their shackles and out of the cages to start treating them medically. And again, the wizard brought up Tensor's floating disc and was
As basically
carting them around.
Essentially as a floating stretcher.
Yes.
It works surprisingly well.
Yes, and I was sitting there, I was like, okay, they're going to go back, going to cut those heads off those gnolls, and then take them in for the bounty.
Nope, because you mentioned that there was a left tunnel. So we
Oh.
get back to the junction, and we're like, we're going to see what's down tunnel number 2.
Yep, so dragging these 2 injured souls down tunnel number 2.
We cast Cure Wounds on them. Their wounds were healed over. They were good. They were stable.
They were stable. They were definitely stable.
Oh, okay, physically they were stable. Mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, they were devastated. But physically, they were fine.
Yes.
Which is the best you can hope for as third-level characters.
Yes, yes.
But were they mentally stable enough to cope with a D&D party?
No.
Not even close, dude.
Oof.
I mean,
We
takes a lot of mental stability to cope with a D&D party.
We gave them extra coin at the end to help rebuild their lives.
Yeah. No, they are actually making pretty good. They're making do. They've made it back to the crossroads where they live, and have been able to restock with a caravan going back with the amount of funds that you gave them.
So, anyway, we head down the left tunnel before we got the villagers back. We
Yes.
head down the left tunnel, find this burial tomb,
Yes.
and instantly start sniffing around, trying to find loot, and suddenly discover, through a little bit of digging and a little bit of mold earth, there is another room underneath.
Yes, there's as you guys dug down and discovered, you dug down into this larger burial area that houses multiple more caskets, but also a living quarters off to one side and what looks to be a larger sanctuary on the opposite side, as though there was a church of sorts or a temple placed here.
Dedicated to a dwarven hero.
Yeah, dedicated to a human hero, but buried in a dwarven burial ground.
That's right.
Yes.
I knew the dwarves were involved.
Yes.
Generally, when it's subterranean and involves beautiful architecture, it's usually the dwarves.
Yep, obviously elves.
Oh, no. Morstein would disagree. This is obviously fine dwarven work.
Yes, he would.
As he says with his pointy ears and his beard.
The finest elf an elf has ever looked.
Yes.
So while your characters started using their you and the it was you, the fighter, or so the wizard, the fighter, and the druid, all using mold earth to try and dig their ways, except for the fighter who was using a shovel, just out of
Well, no, he was using a spell.
excitement.
He kept casting shovel.
kept casting scoop.
Yes.
But you guys dig yourselves a little bubble and just kind of slowly shift the dirt around to make this constant bubble to go forward and dig underneath. Meanwhile, the rest of the group is sitting up top, tending and kind of licking their wounds, taking a long rest, when they start to hear the shambling of these gnoll corpses coming down the hall.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that was where that session ended. And then our next session was when Kenny joined us, so he got dropped in right outside. Would you care to describe what you saw?
So, I felt as if I was emerging from a coma. It's that strange feeling of waking up in the morning and immediately forgetting what you were dreaming, and also forgetting where you are and what you're supposed to do. But you have an urge inside you. Get breakfast. But for me, it was vanquish evil. And immediately I could smell evil down the way. I noticed 2 gnolls entering into a cave, so of course, I follow them.
Yes. Well, I mean, snuffing out all evil.
Mm-hmm.
I work my way into the cave, I sneak up behind them. When I see them trying to force their way through a narrow passageway, I see an opportunity. I draw my weapon, and I begin firing away.
Distracting the gnolls and giving them a stern surprise. Because they are now thinking they have their prey cornered and find an assault from both sides.
Mm-hmm. I loved your descriptions of what Morstein's battle rage, our battle rager barbarian was doing to those poor gnolls and gnoll witherlings.
It was absolutely awful. Those gnolls, they couldn't. Well, there was being a really stingy set of dice that evening. The undead gnolls couldn't roll above a 3, which is terrible for those poor things.
Oh gosh, yes.
They were shambling, fresh brought back from the dead, and weren't fully aware of their current state, trying to slash and attack our barbarian, who's being backed by this life domain cleric. So, the barbarian, bless in hand, raises his great battle axe and begins carving into these poor undead creatures, rolling never below an 18 for the entirety of his attacks. And just, I swear, with that great axe, it did not want to roll under 10. It was either 10, 11, or 12, as he just carved through these poor beasts. Each action, one was shattered or torn to pieces. Oh, it was horrifying for them. And then this crack of thunder from behind, forcing their ears to ring to turn to realize that there's some form of magic caster behind them, utilizing thunder of some kind to pierce them with these tiny arrows.
Oh, my favorite description of the battle was when he was telling it from your Asmir's point of view, Kenny, and you see the gnolls, 2 of the witherlings near the front and near the entrance into the tomb where the barbarian is, have turned. All of a sudden, you see this axe come down, bury itself deep into the shoulder of one of the gnolls, as it's then dragged back into the chamber to be finished off.
From my character's point of view, it was like a scene from a horror film. I was being a player and just knowing the meta of the game, I was like, oh, it's just one of the other player characters. But in character, I imagine the Asmar would be thinking, that is a bigger source of evil. I'm going to come back tomorrow. These gnolls can take care of themselves for the next 5 minutes, if they last that long.
Yes. Well, you actually had the 2 heavier gnolls on you, which you took down pretty well with those 2 pistols.
I mean, they're beautiful in how well they just form holes through skulls.
Mm-hmm.
They work quite nicely, they do.
It was quite an art display of guts on the walls.
Yes. So once the gnolls are done, and this time we did decapitate each and every body as quickly as possible.
Well, you weren't going to get the gold if you didn't bring back heads.
Well, yeah, we had to bring back the heads, but this time we actually made sure we had the heads. So we get the done. We managed to retrieve some loot, get our party together, and we're like, this would be a great lair for our group, especially if we're wanting to form a league of extraordinary adventurers.
Yes.
So next thing we do is we finally get our poor frightened rescuees back to town, load them up with silver and coin, and more than enough to get them up to town, and apparently now restarting their lives quite well.
Oh yes, no, they actually made more on that trip than they thought they would, despite losing both their horses.
Well, there you have it. So we get back, and then we send the fighter Matt's character, I keep forgetting his name, Hans. So we send Hans, who is friends with the blacksmith, who is also on the council of the...
Oh, the Council of Steel, which is the Dwarven Council. Yes, Arnold is actually one of the main leaders of the Dwarven Council.
And friends with Hans, our fighter, who is now convincing everybody that he is a wizard.
Yes.
Harry.
Slowly but surely.
He's starting to gain renown as the most powerful wizard in all of this world.
Of course, it really doesn't help when your divination wizard, whenever he has a 20 sitting around, aids him in convincing people that he is a wizard.
Okay, I will have to explain why I did that. Okay. But so, we figure, okay, now it's time to head off. So, after we figure out, okay, it's going to cost us about 5,000 gold to purchase this plot, and we're going to go with an agricultural claim, which works because we have a druid. Then this evening we came up with the idea of that's how we're going to make our fortune, is we're going to invent pre-sliced bread from the grain that we grow on this property.
Yep.
Which normally would be like, okay, that's just stupid, but we have somebody from the future who's seen it. So he knows. He knows.
You have no idea how infuriating it is to see imperfectly sliced bread. It's like asymmetric, unbalanced.
And we have...
The sandwiches are always lopsided.
And we have at least 2 people on our crew that have proficiency with tinker tools.
Yes.
I know my wizard's character has tinker tools proficiency.
Your wizard has tinkerer's tools, and I believe Hans has tinkerer's
And our
tools.
fighter, yes. So between the 2 of us, we should be able to come up with a device for slicing bread.
Fingers crossed, anyway.
Fingers crossed. And fingers crossed that we don't get our fingers caught in the machinery.
Or otherwise it'd be fingers lost.
You know. So, we decide, all right, we're going to get ourselves an agricultural claim. We need to raise ourselves 5,000 gold to buy this property. And then going agricultural, we only have to pay 500 gold in taxes. Instead of if we went with a mining claim, it'd be a much stiffer tax bracket.
Oh yes, almost double.
Yes, so we decide, all right, we're going to go an agricultural claim, and then we're just not going to tell anybody about the underground cave. We're going to eventually carve that out and turn that into our... I actually like the name League of Extraordinary Adventurers.
It's a workshop title, but I like that
It's a workshop title. Eventually we'll probably come up with something better, but for now, it's League of Extraordinary Adventurers.
So, in just the acronym term, we'd be known as Leah.
Okay, it's a workshop title, okay?
What?
Workshop.
Leah's not a bad acronym.
I mean, just so long as somebody doesn't slap princess in the front of it.
The swords of Leah are on their way.
I don't know how I feel about this name now. You have ruined this for me.
Beware, Leah is around the corner. Don't worry, Leah's on the case.
Okay, we're going to have to go now with... What's closest? Coalbank. We are the superheroes of Coalbank. Come up with that acronym, Kenny.
SC.
I can live with this.
Okay.
We'll all have an SC on our...
On your breastplates.
Yes. Okay.
And make sure there's no spacing, because someone might like doodle a U in between, and then you just suck.
Okay, so we are going to have to come up with a better name. All right, so just to wrap it up, because we're getting the finger from our producer, and I don't think he's supposed to be using that particular one. But
No, that's the proper one.
oh, okay. So we're gonna have to pick this up probably for the next session. But essentially, we make our way to port. We board a ship with the archaeological expedition and
Right.
make our way to an island that is composed completely of ash, and apparently houses the bones of a ungodly draconic skeleton.
It is large.
Actually, I should say godly.
Well, you don't know that yet.
So either ungodly or godly. The mystery remains.
Well, as they get to the island and work their way down, they see this large, protruding dragon snout. that seems to have almost a cave-like opening going within. The snout measures wide enough for a wagon to easily fit between the two front teeth of this dragon. As they work their way down in, they realize their excavation crew is slowly trying to dig out the inside of this dragon to see how large it actually is. And that's where we left your characters for next week.
Yes. You forgot to mention that they found evidence that this thing eats Tarrasques.
Well, I mean, they did find evidence that it ate a Tarrasque.
So, you will find out as soon as we do what happens next. Until then, this is Timothy Gibbons.
And this is Trevor Lancaster.
And this is guest Kenny Shannon.
If you have any comments, critiques, or questions that you would like to send to us,
Or ideas for future topics.
absolutely. You can cast your sending spells to gmtaverntalk@gmail.com, or you can cast your message cantrips into the replies section below. And this is Tavern Talk.